Have you ever experienced domestic violence?
Yes.
And about how long were you being abused?
Um, Emotionally, the whole time, which is about 15 months. Physically, it was only the last maybe 4 months or so.
In what ways did it affect you?
It completely changed me. I'm a very strong person. I'm a very unique, weird person, and I
Hmm.
like that. And these were all things that he told me that he loved about me, but he slowly started to change them. Where I was placating him because I didn't want to fight. And
Hmm.
so I was softening my demeanor, which is something I absolutely do not do.
Hmm.
Um, um, I was doing things around the house differently. I was wearing different things.
Hmm.
He, if I wore makeup, he'd ask who I was wearing makeup for, and usually it was for work.
Right.
Uh, I stopped wearing so much makeup, and yeah, it really just changed me a lot, and I started to just become someone else, and half the
Hmm.
time I knew it.
Right. And so all the things you said, the next question was, did you know your abuser, but you did know him?
I knew him very well.
Hmm.
He came to the hospital the day that my youngest daughter was born. He's
Oh,
been a long time family friend.
oh, okay. Okay. And from what you could tell at the time, with him, did he show any signs of knowing that he was hurting you? Like did he show any signs of knowing that he would be abusive?
At the time, I didn't see it, but
Hmm.
looking back, there were definitely signs that I should have seen from 9 years ago.
Oh, wow. So you knew him for 9 years?
Yeah, he was best friends with the person I was engaged to at the time.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, He- a good family friend. I mean, he was uncle to my
Hmm.
kids for a while, which I know is strange, but don't
Okay.
hate.
Did you ever confront him and let him know that he was abusing you in any way, mentally or physically?
I did, and he had one of two reactions. It was either utterly dismissive,
Hmm.
and he wouldn't even acknowledge that I was even speaking, let alone saying something important, or he would be very angry, and I had done something to cause it.
Right. And did anyone around you or around you two notice that you were being abused?
Yeah. My coworkers noticed. I'm a bartender, so I'm on my feet 8 to 15 hours a day. Guinness, get off the desk. And
Hmm.
I came in with a really hurt foot. It was fractured in a few places, and I
Hmm.
had plywood stuck in it from a fight that we had had. My cat from a
Uh,
fight that we had had, and
hmm.
so they noticed that. And then my best friend, he actually came over the night before everything got really crazy. I call it the 4 days of hell. He came over and he kept trying to talk to me and warn me. And I just kept saying, "Oh no, it's not like that. He's never hit me."
Uh-huh.
And he looked at me and said, "This man could kill you." And I found out the next day that was absolutely possible.
Right. Right. Was this the first time that he confronted you and told you something like that to warn you, or was he warning you before? You just never really.
They had warned me before, as my best friend and my little brother. They had warned me,
Uh-huh.
but they were trying to do it in like a subtle, nice, gentle way, which obviously didn't take. And
Hmm.
I don't think I would have listened to them anyway. I was in my own little world. I had my rose-colored glasses on, and all
Hmm.
flags are the same color with rose-colored glasses on.
Right. What made the abuse stop?
It took, I'd say, about 10. or more visits from the police over the course of 4 days. I was
Hmm.
told there was about 30 phone calls from him, me, friends, and neighbors. Um, and I actually had to tell the senior officer on the scene, I had to demand to file a report. He said, "You guys have been out here for 4 days now.
Uh-huh.
Like I'm tired. You're tired of our stuff. I'm tired of our stuff. Like I want to file a report." And they still tried to accuse me of false reporting at first.
Hmm.
And he had made up a story that I was holding a knife on him or something, and I didn't. So it took a lot. I felt that it's been a struggle to get anything, and I still am struggling to get help for all this. So it continues, even though there's a protection order in place, and it still continues. He finds ways.
Right. After it stopped, the abuse and everything, after it all stopped, did you continue to see him or speak to him?
No, the protection order was a full no contact,
Okay.
but he did break that order. And he came to the house one night. A friend of mine had set it up, so it's not entirely his fault, my fault. A friend thought they were helping, I suppose. And he came by the house, and I didn't know what to do, and I just let him in. And he stayed for about a week, and then there was no physical abuse that time, but just the manipulation and just the
Mhm.
emotional abuse. Just it just started right back where I left off.
Right. And did he acknowledge at any time during this that he abused you or hurted you or anything like that?
There were a few times that he apologized. He said that he apologized for some of the things he destroyed, like my kids' work.
Hmm.
He said that he regretted saying horrible things about my friends' kids and sexual threats against my daughter. You know, he
Hmm.
apologized for that. Otherwise, there was just a lot of, well, you did this. You did this. This was your fault.
Right. Those apologies, did you felt like they were genuine?
Absolutely not.
Right.
Maybe the one about my daughter, actually, that one felt kind of genuine because, you know, he's known her since the day she was born. But the ones, could you get your,
Uh,
the ones directed towards me, they were empty.
mm. Would you want a genuine apology from him, or do you feel like it? Yeah,
No,
no. Mm.
no, I think that any sort of conversation about this ever again would just, I'm one of those people, I like to know things, and I'm finally at this point where I don't need to know those answers. I don't
Yeah.
want to. I don't, that's not going to help me. If he wants to apologize, then I may listen, but I probably will not interact.
Right.
And he can't do that until the protection order's over anyway.
Right. And so this abuse has been going on over a course of time, and so you're still going through it now, so it's pretty fresh, right?
The first arrest was made the beginning of May.
Hmm.
The abuse wasn't too bad until, like, I mean, obviously it was bad, but it
Hmm.
wasn't highly apparent until a substance use problem became a problem, and he went
Hmm.
into a psychosis where he was paranoid. He thought I was cheating. He thought people were coming in and out of my house, shooting guns at his car. He thought bugs were like planting larvae in his flight muscles.
Oh well. Yeah.
And like, I mean, these things were real to him, you know, because he
Hmm.
was in that psychosis, but he would be so angry with me because I didn't take him to the ER 3 times in one day and sit with him because I knew what they were going to say.
Uh-huh.
And it got to the point where it was traumatic for me and very toxic for me to be around him in that because I couldn't handle it.
Right. Do you, knowing that substance abuse was a part of what was going on, do you entirely blame him, or does he get half the blame and the other half is to the substances that were in his body at the time?
The level of severity is definitely due to the substances that were in the body at the time.
Hmm.
He was very amplified. I mean, he's always been very insistent, very persistent. he and I have had many yelling matches over the years. That's just, we're both passionate, stubborn, bullheaded people.
Mhm.
But it got to a point where one night, he pushed me and my whole world just kind of cocked on its side, and I started thinking about things, and then I would think about more things, and then the fighting got worse, and then he was telling his family back home that I had a really bad drug problem, and that's how he was expressing that he did without having to say that it was him. So his family started to hate me, and when he moved in, that became big tension between everyone, and
Mhm.
it just built and built until it was just insane. I don't even have another adjective, and just absolutely crazy.
Right.
And he wouldn't listen to me when I would be like, maybe we should, try to cut back on this. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this. And
Uh-huh.
it just, I didn't know what I was talking about. I didn't remember things correctly.
Oh.
Um, that's not how it happened.
Mhm.
And I do have memory problems from an accident a long time ago, as well as COVID long hauler symptoms. And so
Mhm.
I do have memory problems. And he was really using that on me, and that gaslight burned pretty damn bright.
Right. Right. I guess that kind of leads into the next question I had, and that was, did you today, do you suffer mentally or physically
Don't
from
fight.
that abuse that you went through?
A little bit I do. I'm I suffer with mental illness. I have since I was young. And
Mhm.
I shouldn't say suffer. I live with mental illness. So I am keenly self-aware, and
Mhm.
I've always been very proud of that. And I have noticed I have new trauma responses I didn't used to have.
Right.
I am hypersensitive to any sort of social interaction.
Mhm.
I got into a discussion, just a normal discussion with a really good friend the other night about women in corporate workforces and the glass ceiling. And
Mhm.
as soon as he raised his voice, I went off, and I
No.
couldn't stop it.
Mhm.
And it wasn't fair to him or to me, but I suddenly found myself backing away.
Mhm.
He went to like swat at something in the air on a tree, and I flinched, and I don't flinch.
Mhm.
I've been wearing my shoes in the house a lot because I had to flee the house with no shoes on, and I couldn't find my keys in my bag, and I was running out the door, and
Huh.
his motorcycle was parked outside, so I tipped it over, and I do regret doing that. I do understand that could have been a charge on my behalf, but
Mhm.
I knew he'd stop for that bike and not for me, and
Mhm.
it worked. And I was able to go meet the police in a parking lot where they did absolutely nothing. But
Mhm.
I wore my shoes in the house for a long time, and I don't ever wear shoes, not even outside.
Right. Um, with the abuse and things, and having your mental issues, could you tell immediately that there was a difference in mentally what was going on with you that has been going on, and what has been added on with the abuse, or did over time you start noticing little things?
I started noticing it over time, and in the beginning, I knew I was doing it. Most of the time, I was like, you know what, I think I'm just going to go with it. And
Mhm.
then doing that became habit.
Mhm.
And I just, whatever he said, okay, I don't feel like being called names and having an argument tonight. So I changed the way I dressed.
Mhm.
Um, I had to change what kind of undergarments I wore,
Mhm.
because if I wore the wrong ones, they were for somebody else.
Oh, well. Mhm. And did you try to change his mind and the way he was thinking a lot of times, or was that just a lot of arguments? And
I didn't try to change his mind. I tried to have an open conversation, because that's one of the things that we had that was really good in our relationship. Is
mhm.
in the beginning we didn't know how to communicate because we were really good friends, and then we became a couple, and there was a lot of growing pains associated with that.
Mhm.
And then we broke up for a while, got back together, and we learned how to communicate.
Mhm.
And I was just trying to have an open conversation and say, this is how I feel. You're being very dismissive.
Mhm.
And he would just be just completely dismissive. He just plays video games and not even acknowledge I was in the room. But I wasn't allowed to leave the room because I had to stay hanging out in the room with him.
Uh-huh.
And finally, one day when he was picking at the worms in his hand,
Mhm.
I told him that I felt he was being extraordinarily dismissive, and something clicked in his head. And I don't know, that's another thing. I don't know what was real and what's not so much anymore. I don't know what was a game. I don't know what was him trying to get something and what was real. But
Uh-huh.
it looked genuine, and he apologized. He's like, I'm sorry. We're going to work on that. And then instead, we just fought for 4 days.
Oh, well. Yeah. Yeah. The 4 days you mentioned
The 4 days of
earlier.
hell.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And, the the abuse that you went through, um, do you feel like you brought any of it on yourself? Or
Some of it, yeah. I'm not
Mhm.
a very, I don't sit still, look pretty. I'm
Mhm.
proud of that.
Yeah.
But he and I have a lot in common. And one of those things is that we are very good with words.
Mhm.
We're very observant. We know how to find that one thing that bugs you, and we'll just tear at it until it tears you open. I mean, we both have silver tongues. We are both mean people when we're angry, especially when we're comfortable with who we're with. And, I mean, that's a toxic trait on both our parts. But
Mhm.
there were times where he would hit that nerve, and I would just say something really terrible because I knew it would hurt him.
Mhm.
I
Oh,
definitely had my part in it, but I don't think that I deserved a lot of the things that I got as a result.
right. Right. And, after the abuse, that you went through, immediately after, were you able to form normal, healthy relationships and connections with people?
Absolutely not.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even register it. Before the police even left, they were trying to talk to me about the victim's advocate, and I was just like, I just need to clean up.
Mhm.
I didn't register, and then it started to, and then he broke the protection order,
Mhm.
and I would within minutes, I was right back into that old routine, that old habit, just right back in it. And then when he left that one, he had hurt me emotionally and mentally more than he ever has.
Mhm.
And I haven't come back from that one yet. Actually, it's been a lot. I don't cry. I'm not a huggy, feely kind of person, and
Mhm.
I cry almost every day
Oh, wow.
over silly things.
Mhm. Um, Now with all that crying, uh, are you used to it? Are you getting used to it, or are you still fighting? It's not
I'm getting
something you're
used to
gonna
it, but it still
yeah.
makes me angry
Uh-huh. Mhm.
because the victims advocates promised me therapy back in May, and they
Mhm.
said the earliest I could get in would be October, and the end of October, and they haven't called me, and I can't get a hold of anyone, and so I'm just giving up on that. I mean, I was failed
Mhm.
in quite a few ways by the victims advocate, the prosecutor, the police department. I
Mhm.
was failed in a lot of ways, and a lot of it is because they're very hyper vigilant to make sure that women aren't using this as like a source of power to get back at somebody for something. And
Right.
I was very over hyper vigilant, trying to make sure that that's not what I was doing. I wasn't trying to get him in trouble out of spite or vengeance or jealousy or insecurity. And
Mhm.
I think that I was failed in a lot of ways.
Right. It sounds like it. Um, have you during the time of the abuse, have you ever seen a therapist or professional or anything like that? Are you are you planning to in the future?
I don't think they're going to call. And
Mhm.
because of the specific types of mental illness that I live with,
Mhm.
they have to find a specialist for me on top
Oh,
of a DV specialist.
okay.
And my insurance sure doesn't cover that.
Right. Oh,
And the
okay.
restitution has already come and passed. Nobody told me. Nobody notified me of my hearing, which is my legal right.
Mhm.
So I just, yeah, I don't think it's going to happen.
Oh, okay. Um, with all that's happened to you, the abusive relationship that you was in, and the history of abuse that you have, do you fear being a victim again in another abusive relationship with someone close to you?
I haven't feared it yet, but I do have a fear that it very easily could happen because
Hmm.
I've looked back on past relationships and most of my major relationships have been very similar to this. And most of my familial relationships as a child were like that as well. So I'm not sure I know any different.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, this all that you've been going through, you're still going through it now. That's what's very interesting. And so I'm glad you were able to share some of that. And for even going through it now, there's more that's going to happen after this point. And yeah, I guess I'm gonna stay in contact with you, and if we can follow up to see what else comes of this, that would be great. But for now, all that you shared, uh, what advice would you give anyone out there, any women who were going through domestic violence but don't know what to do?
Um, I'm not sure there was anything I could have done different. I mean, I tried to call the police. I
Hmm.
tried to enforce the civil assists that he was supposed to have that he didn't comply with.
Hmm.
I tried. I guess the only advice I'd really have is listen to your best friend, man. if
Yeah.
I would have just, I would have just shut my mouth, opened my ears, and listened to my bestie. He would have, if he could have gotten through to me, it would be different because when he said this man could kill you, the next day I'm laying on the floor crying, and he's got a chair held above my head, above his head, and that's all I hear on a loop was he could kill you.
Hmm.
So, I mean, listen to your friends. If they see something and you trust them, they see it.
Right. Right. Well, I appreciate you joining me with this interview on domestic violence. That's a sensitive but a big and important topic, and I appreciate you sharing and being open as you were. And thank you for everything.
Yeah, of course.
Bye.